Morning, everybody. Let's see, I'm going to put this just down here. Oh, shouldn't need that. How's everybody? Is it okay if I move around? I feel like everybody's so far, and you know, the picture, you know, and in 20 years, as he's giving, it's so weird to hear yourself introduced, you know, and you hear 20 years. I think a lot of us probably put that kind of stuff on our resume when it's really probably more like 35 years on the resume. But and then that picture, I think, needs to be updated as well. A little more gray and hair in other places, so I probably need to get that updated. But thank you, thanks to Craig and the folks here, Hill Country Bible, and of course Purpose Works and Job Seeker Network. It's great to have an opportunity to come and speak to folks. And yeah, my name is Pinto. Usually it was amazing what the stuff that y'all have, the resources that now Purpose Works, but Job Seeker Network has put together is just phenomenal. So Watermark's, they call it Careers in Motion. It started in probably 2004 and have put together a lot of stuff. But when I saw what Craig has put together and his team, it's fantastic stuff. Great resources. So hopefully everybody's taking advantage of that. A little bit about me before we kind of get started. As I said, I did marry my college sweetheart, Amy. We've been married for almost 36 years now. We met at A&M. I realized I was the only whoop in the crowd, but that's okay. And I started my career in Dallas as a CPA, and I tell folks that stands for couldn't pass again, because although I keep my hours and everything, I am long since from doing any kind of public accounting practice. But I have two grown daughters, and they both are Aggies, and they married Aggies. You know how us Aggies are. But the greatest thing is they produce these three wonderful grandchildren. So Spencer, who just turned 6, we had his birthday party yesterday. Cooper is 4. He'll be 5 in July. He'll say he's 4.5. And then Lily is our little granddaughter, and she just turned, I guess she's almost 14 months now. So, but has been walking like it since like 9.5, 10 months. So it's just like she's, you know, running circles around her parents, which is crazy. And then you can see this picture here with me and the Capitol in the background. So I make a long story short, Thomas Edwards Group, we're an executive search firm. We specialize in accounting, finance, HR, and technology. We've got offices in Dallas and Fort Worth, which we've kind of been in that market for about 27 years. But a couple of years ago, as part of our growth strategy, the firm was talking about, hey, what do we want to do to grow organically? And it was to open up some new offices. And we're Texas-based and kind of want to remain that way because we're all about relationships. Well, we actually had a choice to make between Houston and Austin, and a lot of folks would say, oh, Houston's bigger, it's got all this. It was interesting. Some of the things that were happening in Austin were just made it clear, and certainly the team was all excited about, hey, let's Austin first. So I raised my hand and said, hey, I'd love to do that. Empty nesters, my wife can travel with me. It'd be great to come down to Austin. We got longtime friends here and some relationships. So did that. So that's kind of the base. So we officially opened up January 1, but for about 2 years, I've kind of been making some reconnaissance trips down here. And so that's a little bit about me. I think maybe a little bit about my career. So I started public accounting, went into industry, a great opportunity there, but had some changes there. And you know, and maybe what makes sense to go is I know Craig had shared that I could give a little bit of a devotional, and maybe this is a good spot for it, because I feel like in 1998 I was in a job search. Let me rephrase that. I was in a desperate job search. Okay. And so I don't know if anybody wanted to look up a verse, but Deuteronomy 31:8. If anybody wants to, anybody got a, no, I don't know if anybody's brought a Bible or anybody got an app or anything. And if you don't, that's okay. I've got it. So if somebody doesn't, that's okay. Just thought little audience participation if somebody wanted to do that. But let me just set the stage of that verse. First of all, Deuteronomy 31:8. God has led, the Israelites had been in captivity in Egypt for hundreds of years in bondage. God had led them out, crossed the Red Sea. They even, Israelites had fallen, with Aaron building this golden calf, and God's frustrated, right, with his people. But he's also shown them the promised land. They've had the spies go into the promised land. They've seen that there's milk, and it's flowing with milk and honey. We've all kind of heard some of that. But there's also giants in the land, right? They're fortified cities, and they don't think they're any match for these people, or at least 10 of the spies. And that's when God kind of shares this verse. So if you've got it. Yeah, go ahead. 31:8. Right, so 31:8, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. And I think there's some great principles there for leadership. We're all leaders, whether we're leading ourselves, leading our families, leading organizations. The four basic concepts within that verse, there's vision, right? The Lord himself goes before you. So he knows, he's got a plan for your life. He had a plan for the Israelites as well. And he's participating in that plan. So there's vision, there's participation. So he's going to participate in that plan. The Lord is with you. He will be with you, right? So he's there in the midst of this job search. He's in the midst of our jobs. He's in the midst of where he's leading us. And then there's commitment. He's never going to leave us or forsake us. So no matter what if we're experiencing great bounty, he's with us. If we're experiencing great loss, he's with us. He's not leaving us. And then finally, encouragement, right? Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. And so that's the message I was needing to hear in 1998. And so let me tell you a little bit about that. So in 1998, correct myself, I was actually in a job search even 2 years before that. So I had been with a company. I was enjoying what I do. Company got bought, and many folks have probably experienced some of those things. Things change, and due to some of the politics and other things going on, I thought, I'm going to start looking for something else, and I wanted to be out of the day-to-day political discussions that were going on. So I took a job in our sales group, took a territory, and it required me to travel. So I was traveling, I was away from my home, my kids were young at the time. That made me unhappy. I actually enjoyed what I was doing, but I didn't like being away from my family. And I felt like God wanted me to be with my family. So for 2 years, I was praying that God would deliver me from that. I didn't, so I'm wandering through, but he stayed with me. I had some interviews that I thought seemed really promising. I even thought, there's no way. I had a third interview, and I thought, there's no way. This is my ticket out off the road. Nope, didn't get the job. Was I discouraged? Yes, but just kind of reminding myself that God's got a plan. Finally, I kind of, as we do sometimes, took it on myself. I got a job offer. It was with a Fortune 500 company. Never worked for a Fortune 500 company before. Great benefits. The salary was fair. They had a pension plan. And I don't know, a lot of companies don't have pension plans anymore. So I thought, this is great. I've never had this. And so I took the job, got off the road, thought this is God's provided, was miserable. More miserable than being on the road and being away from my family. The bureaucracy, some of those kinds of things that were happening. My first day on the job, I had to go meet with my internal client and get a list of names of people he wanted to lay off. That was, whoa. My first day, welcome aboard, Ben. Just not what I had thought was going to happen. And I thought, okay, well, this is just the first day, right? Or the first month, right? Things are going to be hard for a while. Things just continued to get worse to the point where it was unhealthy for me. So I broke the cardinal sin or the cardinal rule of job seeking, right? Don't quit a job until what? To have a job, right? And I would still be the one to tell you, don't do it. But sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes it is just, you're not, if people around you, your family, your friends are encouraging, hey, this is not you. You need to, you do need to go ahead and leave. Trust the Lord. Again, not the advice I would normally give, but I think sometimes you got to listen to other people as well, right? You need community around you to tell you those things. So anyway, I did leave. Now I had some things working because I had been kind of looking. This was in 98. when one of the people I had talked with, the founder of that organization, heard that I had left or had actually resigned, had given notice, he said, "Hey, come on and join us. I think you're going to be great." This was in the staffing business in 1998. He said, "Come join us. You can do business development for us. If it doesn't work out, we can place you somewhere or we can put you on a project." And so I said, "Hey, that sounds great." This guy had vision. He was going to participate. He was going to be committed to my success, and he was encouraging. Again, modeling those. And so I guess my message to you is hang in there. There is an opportunity. I never thought I could enjoy what I do. And to this day, I've found such great fulfillment in doing what I get to do. I've been doing it for 25 years, 12 years with one firm, now almost 14 years with Thomas Edwards Group. And it's fulfilling. And I would just say, hang in there. God's got a plan. He's going to be with you, and he's committed to you, and be encouraged. So that's my little devotional. Now, I don't know about you, but I had never really even thought about the idea of project work as a possibility until I got into the staffing business. I knew there were consulting firms and things like that and public accounting firms, but I didn't know about the idea of project work. And so Craig had heard me give a presentation like this, and he said, "Hey, I think that might be helpful to our group just to know about options out there." So what we kind of a little agenda is just to understanding project and consulting type of work, interim type of work. What's the differences? What are the benefits? What are the concerns about doing this kind of work? How do you locate and price this type of work if you are going to do it? What are companies targeting? How do you work with firms that do this kind of work? And then just putting yourself in a good position for success in this work. And then we'll have some time for questions, as well as just some market update conditions. Sound like a good plan? All right. Let's talk a little bit about projects and consulting work, and understand that because of our area of focus, being kind of in the accounting, finance, human resources, and technology, some of this might take a little bit of a spin there. So I don't know. I know we've got some people from finance. We probably have some people in tech. I'm guessing, is there any, just kind of a poll, what different groups are y'all in terms of your backgrounds? What kind of jobs are you looking for? Supply chain? So logistics and supply chain type stuff? Accounting, okay. Controller? Yeah. Analyst, okay. So we got a lot of finance and sales and enablement? Marketing and sales enablement? Tech. All right. So we got different cross-section of groups. So some of this, and with a lot being kind of in that tech and accounting, finance kind of space, might some of my examples might actually be meaningful. But project consulting. So typically, what I characterize as project consulting is where you've got a subject matter expert that is really kind of leading the effort. You think of it almost more like an outsourced, hey, we're going to go engage with Accenture or some third-party consulting firm that's going to lead an engagement. They've got methodologies, they've got tools, and those kinds of things. And so now oftentimes they're looking to, as companies are looking to outsource more and more, those are the kinds of organizations that may be looking for people. Because who do they outsource to? They may outsource to some of these consulting firms. So those are one kind of area of this type of work. Interim work, I characterize that as more of, think traditional employment, that there's an open position at an organization. It could be open because of some medical leave, a medical maternity leave kind of situation. It could be open because somebody left and it's going to take time to hire. So let's get somebody in here in the interim while we're conducting our search. Let's get somebody in to keep the wheels going, so we're making progress. We're getting the job done while we search. Contract to hire is just that, right? Somebody wants to try before they buy. It's an open position. They know they're in a hurry. Let's get somebody in here, give them a shot. Maybe there's some nuances to the job that just require, let's make sure they're the right fit. Or maybe there's some things going on in the organization that are unsure, right? They could be contemplating a sale. of the company, and so they may not want to be hiring somebody on a permanent basis if that job is going to be going away. But it may not go away, so let's bring somebody in on a contract hire basis. So those are those. Has anybody ever done this type of work, like project, contract, interim type of work? Just show of hands. So a few folks have. Okay, good. Good experience, bad experience, mixed? Mixed, okay, both. So you've done multiple types of projects? Okay, good, yeah. You never know what you're going to get, right? So I'll leave this up just for a second as we kind of get starting to talk about benefits. Try to mix in a few little comics to try to keep it light. So benefits of project and consulting work, cash flow, right? That's the most immediate. If you're in a job search, you need cash flow, right? You need to pay the bills, and sometimes this type of work can move a lot quicker than the job search can. So keep just cash flow. Fresh new experience learning. Sometimes because a company may be eager to move quickly, they may be a little more flexible, right? You may not have that industry background, or you may not be familiar with that technology or that software, but this may be the opportunity for you to get it because they need somebody quickly, and you check more of the boxes than you don't check, and it could be an opportunity to get that extra new experience. Confidence. I mean, if you've been out of work and not working for a while, I know it certainly took a toll on me. I mean, I shared just a tidbit of the backstory of my search, but I was depressed. I think I used the word unemployable. I thought I was unemployable because I was so miserable in my director of financial planning and analysis position for the AIS department of this company, right? I mean, it was that kind of a title and that kind of a job, and I was miserable. So I think sometimes when you're using your skills and experience, not only you're hopefully producing some cash flow, but you're actually using those skills. You're getting stories to talk about it, which makes you a better interviewer, right? It makes you a better candidate because you're using those skills. So confidence, flexibility. You get to pick and choose your assignments sometimes. If you're doing this type of work as a career or as a career supplement, you get to pick and choose your assignments. You may want to take 3-month projects so that you can take summers off or something like that. I've had candidates over the years do that. So there is opportunity to have a little more flexibility in your work. And then work-life balance. Most of the time, you're going to get paid for every hour you work in this type of an arrangement as a contractor or interim, call it staff augmentation. You're going to get sometimes time and a half, depending on the level of the work for overtime, but you're going to at least get paid for every hour you work, even if it's straight time. Well, companies want to try to manage costs. They a lot of times don't want to pay for overtime. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a work-life balance potentially. Less politics. You're not involved in that stuff, right? You're not an employee of that organization, so you typically aren't having to participate in the company gossip that's going on or whatever happens to be. Those decisions don't impact you. A lot of times what people will say is, I like doing this type of work because at least in our projects, we're typically not putting somebody out there to manage people. The management responsibilities usually lie with whoever our client is, the hiring manager. Even if it's call it a controller level position, they typically, maybe the CFO would maintain those direct reports and not have a contractor coming in to manage the team. So sometimes you don't even have those headaches that come sometimes with managing people. And the possibility, you've always got the possibility of it turning into a permanent position. And the good thing about that is you know what you're getting, right? I mean, go back to my example when if I'd gone into that Fortune 500 company on a contract basis, I probably would have come out of there going, this is not for me. In fact, I was sharing with my daughter that I was going to share this story. She goes, well, make sure you share the fact that failure was your greatest success. And I think I failed to do that when I was sharing that story. So what I learned about myself in that job was where I can thrive. I thrived best in a smaller environment where I'm known, I know others, I can see the fruit of my labor. And so I'd gone through that kind of desert experience to what I would have considered my biggest failure, as now I look back, that's where I learned where I can succeed. And so for the last 25 years, I've been a part of smaller organizations where I've been able to do that. So anyway, she'll be proud of me for at least sharing that with y'all. So concerns, whether it's kind of like this consultant that doesn't seem to know what he does, right, and consultant. What are some of the other concerns? It does impact your permanent search. Is everybody here looking, show of hands, who's looking for a permanent position right now? So pretty much most everybody. Okay, so pretty much everybody. So this can impact your search, your permanent search. Generally, my advice here is if you are newly into a search, and you haven't been in a search in a while, it can take some time to get that train moving down the track. And so I generally discourage somebody jumping into project or consulting or contract type work, because at the beginning stage of your interview or of your search process, you're going to events like this, right? You're going to interviews, you're meeting with recruiters, you're meeting with other networking groups, you're trying to grab coffee with friends and family, get the message out that you're looking, and the immediate activities that start to happen, that's a lot of meetings. And to jump into a contract or a project position, you're going to be asking for time off all the time, and that's not a good impression either on that employer, because keep in mind, those could turn into permanent positions, contract to hire kind of situation, or it's going to certainly lead to other activities. And so you just don't want to send that message that that's not who you are, right? You're going to be a committed type of employee and work hard. So I generally discourage people, but if you've got a severance package or you've got some savings and can have some time to invest in yourself and your search, do so. If not, then hey, contract is a great way to generate that cash flow. So I totally understand people might have to do that. But that will impact your job search. Downtime, there's downtime between projects. It's just inevitable. And you don't always know when that's coming, right? So there's some uncertainty as to these ending. But the downtime, it could be, I know for our folks that work projects for us in contract positions, we love to be able to take somebody from one project and put them on the next, right, as that other one is ending, but it doesn't always work out that way. So just that anxiety that comes with downtime, I mean, there's always tends to be another opportunity around the corner, but you don't know whether that around the corner is a day, a week, a month, longer sometimes. It just depends. So that downtime you have to be able to weather that downtime. And then it could end. It could end, I've had projects end before they got started because something happens, right? They pulled the plug on a project, or they lost a big customer. Or it ends after a day or two because the person's just not the right fit, right? They don't have the level of expertise that was needed to ramp up quickly. Or it could be on the company side too. They weren't ready for somebody, and so they realize they've got more work to do before bringing somebody in. So it can go either way, but it's uncertain. Do you have a question? Or no? Okay. Dealing with multiple firms can be challenging, right? Where you've got firms that are speaking into both ears. Sometimes you're getting pulled in different directions. Hey, you know what? Leave this project to go take this project, or hey, ours is contract to hire, theirs is not. Go ahead and leave that one and come to this one. So you're having to deal with these kinds of things, and that can put you in a difficult position because you're kind of thinking, okay, well, I've got to provide for myself, I've got to provide for my family. What's best? And so just dealing with multiple firms can be really challenging. Sometimes you don't know where your resume's been sent. So trying to making sure you're working with firms that are doing the right thing and not sending you places that you don't know about, those kinds of things. But that's one of the concerns of doing this type of work. And then matching skills to the project needs. That goes more along the lines of sometimes clients need an extra level of skill that maybe just didn't match yours, and so that could result in a project ending. So let's talk a little bit about locating and pricing this type of work. 85% of jobs get landed through the network. And so the kind of activities you're doing here, and I'll applaud folks. I usually start off these types of meetings by saying, hey, I'm glad you're here, right? Not necessarily glad about the situation that brought you here, not excited about that at all, but excited that you're engaging with people, and that, because that's a big step in this process, is just talking to people. That's the way. At some point, you're going to be meeting people in this process. You're better off doing it sooner rather than later, and hearing about opportunities. So find organizations that might be geared towards your specialization, right? So whether it's some logistics types of organizations that focus there, or for instance, Financial Executives International, FEI. Those are some finance and accounting type of groups. There's CFO leadership groups. There's human resource groups, right? You got SHRM. You've got local organizations that gather people with like skills and experience, and usually they come with some equipping, presentation type stuff. So you're getting some actual wisdom or some knowledge. But then you're also getting to connect with people, and job leads get shared with those types of groups. So it's really important that you participate. So think about, I mean, again, I don't know. Maybe I think marketing and sales were some of the group. I mean, are there some marketing groups out there? Like, this is more from my knowledge. Are there some groups? What sort of groups have you been able to participate in? I know some of the finance and accounting groups, but what about like sales and marketing? Yeah, you haven't. So it's generally becomes more general type of group organizations where you've got a mix of everything.
Yeah, but I do see the value of what you're saying, because I'm noticing the topics are similar. Like there's a certain broad level of topics that get covered in these groups.
Mm-hmm.
And if I keep going week after week and don't find a job right away, I'm going to need some differentiated information.
Yeah, I think that's good. And there's. I'm trying to think if as I come across different groups, I think there's those meetups and others that sometimes just getting people with some similar backgrounds and trying to coordinate. I mean, it may be an opportunity, right, to just coordinate. You meet 3 or 4 people and say, hey, let's try to get a group going just with marketing and support type folks that might be interested in that. Creative types, right? You get a little bit more of those creative types, and there's usually sometimes you think, okay, wait a minute, these are the people I'm competing with for a job. Well, the reality is you're really not. Employers are going to find the right fit. They're going to work through the process until they get to the right fit. That might be you. That might be your friend that you just made in the group that you're trying to help too. And so some of the greatest success I've heard from people that were actually sharing those type of job leads among themselves. And because once you land, you're going to end up getting some calls. Some things are going to bubble up because you've been in this search mode that you'll be able to share with other people. So it's good to be, have some people in your similar backgrounds that you can help. So networking is key. Online internet postings, I think that's a great research tool. In fact, we were looking at, there's a book of lists back here that has a lot of companies. And so using some resources like that, just so you go, hey, what are the companies out there that might be hiring folks like me? You can use, LinkedIn. You can use the job postings more as hey, where are the jobs? Do I know anybody at those organizations? Use those and then try to work your network to get in there. Companies oftentimes have incentives for employees to make referrals. So there's something in it for them. If you know somebody, your neighbor or family member, somebody knows somebody, do that first before trying to apply. I mean, at some point you might have to apply, but like anybody, I know that can be frustrating, right? I mean, you wonder, did anybody see my resume? I feel like I got a canned response that said, thank you for your interest, but sometimes you don't know, you don't even hear any closure on it. It's just out there. So it's necessary, and you might have to apply that way, but if at all possible, use your network. The project consulting firms, knowing, are there firms that specialize in my services, the type of services that I provide, that do it on a consulting basis? You know, knowing who those people are, right? Whether it's Accenture or um, Alvarez Marsal or whoever it happens to be, public accounting firms. Do they look for my type of skills? And maybe there's an opportunity to know those firms, meet with those firms, so they at least know you're out there and that you're interested in doing this type of work. Search firms, agencies, firms like Thomas Edwards Group. We're always looking for people, and just to see, we may or may not have something that's fitting for somebody at the time, but we want to keep up with our relationships. And so whether it's this happens to be this search or the next search, just knowing and forging relationships with firms that you can trust, right? That they seem to be interested in building a relationship. Has anybody here worked with recruiters before? Probably mixed experiences there too, I'm sure. But you probably had some that were good, right? That you felt like, okay, they're being honest with me, they're giving me feedback, they may or may not place you, but you feel like, okay, there's a relationship there, right? So I would say that's a place to invest your time, keeping up with those relationships, particularly if they've been around a while. It will really pay off to have those long-term relationships, whether during this search in your career or the next one. Pricing it becomes a little tricky. Kind of what you were making on your last position, and that's a good place to start, is always thinking, okay, well, this is what I've been making, this is what I live on. That's great. But the roles dictate the pay. And so sometimes if you were in a management position, that may be paying a premium for management, and you may be looking at more of an individual contributor role for this project. You're not going to be leading a team, certainly not a big team. Maybe you've led big teams in the past, and that's great skill and great experience, but it may not, because of this role, it may not pay you what you're worth if you were in that role. Does that make sense? So, you could be a COO, CEO, but if you're doing senior level work, then you're probably not going to get COO or CEO pay, right? And then win-win pricing. What I mean by that is if you're really serious about trying to do this work and longer term, is consider being, maybe discounting a little bit just to form a relationship. If it's a short-term assignment, you might be able to be a little more flexible, have a win under your belt with that firm. They're going to be much more motivated to get you on the next one. And you can be honest with them. Say, hey, normally I'm making this, but hey, I'm willing to discount that a little bit to have the opportunity to work with you, and you get to see what kind of work I do. And I think that's going to establish a good reputation, a good working relationship. And if it gets extended, you can even have those discussions, right? Hey, well, you said it's a 3-month project, and hey, for 3 months I'll discount this. But if it's going to get extended longer, hey, I'm going to probably want more like X. And that's okay to share up front. Again, having that open conversations, but win-win pricing. Maybe you have to be flexible because it's close, or you can be flexible because it's close to home, or maybe it's remote, and so you can be really flexible. So some of those kinds of things, just looking at win-win pricing, because they may not be able to pay, the firm may not be able to pay as much as you'd like, right? Let's see here. Oops. There we go. Uh-oh, did I go? Oh, I went back too far. I don't think I had a blank one. Uh-oh. Did we lose our slides? Oh, uh-oh. How did I go all the way to the back? Sorry about that, folks. All right. Yeah, that's where we were, right? Yeah, what companies are targeting. Hot projects, now I know in my world, there seems to be a lot of NetSuite implementations, right? NetSuite is a ERP package that seems to be really growing amongst the small mid-market companies because that's typically where we focus our attention. But so that type of project is big. A lot of, although we didn't have a whole lot last year of M&A type of activity, we're starting to see more this year. And so mergers, acquisitions type of work, cleanup work, integration work, start to see a little bit more of that. There weren't a lot of IPOs last year. IPO readiness may be another one in the space of the accounting and finance world. I'm trying to think of as far as if anybody else has ideas of hot projects, anything that other folks are hearing about at the organizations maybe you left or were going to. Anybody got anything to share from a project or a software? CRM, yeah, CRMs. Yeah, and whenever you have a lot of companies, particularly a lot of acquisitions and integrations, then you might be migrating to one system, right? Some scalability projects, right? Hey, how do we automate things? Because, hey, we're getting bigger. We can't keep doing things so manually. We got to automate. And as some of these smaller firms may not be, they may be a lot more manual. So trying to get them into a greater level of sophistication can be challenging. Those types of projects can be big. Technical expertise. Healthcare, it's big in healthcare. I mean, right, to be able to work with certain machinery or manufacturing, having some skill sets in particular areas of manufacturing. SEC reporting for public companies can be really big. Revenue recognition is another big one. Having some level of technical expertise. Industries are, sorry? Oh, that was somebody out there. Industries, right now, I mean, of course, being in Austin, it's probably a good thing. I mean, just government tends to be growing right now, particularly local and state. Seems to be investing a lot. There seems to be a lot of positions in those areas. May not always be the highest paying jobs, but can be stable. But certainly looking at those sectors, healthcare is still very hot as the demand for those types of jobs. Hospitality industry is still a pretty popular one right now as far as growing. They're still trying to make up for what they lost during the pandemic in terms of the resource people that exited that. Financial services, more like the public accounting firms. Those firms are still looking for people. So those kinds of industries seem to be pretty hot. And then the having those similar industries, but then also software is a big key, what companies are looking for. Because keep in mind, if you're doing project work, they're wanting somebody that can jump in quickly, right? And so that means being familiar with their tools, right? So if it's their ERP system or their CRM, or maybe it's, trying to think what else, the other, at least being in the same industry, the language, you might know their software, so you're able to hit the ground running a lot faster. Let's see. Working with project consulting and interim firms. Okay, so finding a match for your background and needs. Find a firm that you can trust, that listens to you, that seems to understand you. Ideally, they specialize in the areas that you're in. I just think they're going to see more opportunities. And you can kind of go to websites. You certainly go to ours, and you can kind of see, what does this firm do? What kind of positions do they have? These positions, do they sound like me? Do they not sound like me? And then just making sure that, like I said, they're interested in a relationship. They're listening to you. They're not calling you about positions that don't make sense to you. Sometimes I know just from experience, when I was working with some firms, I'd say, hey, I don't want to do audit. I started my career in audit. I'm not interested in audit. I'd get a call about, hey, we got this audit position. I'm not interested. You didn't listen to me. So make sure they're listening to you. W-2 versus 1099. Has anybody here worked 1099 before? Okay. Oh, got a handful. So you may be more experienced than I am when it comes to some of the benefits of both. I mean, typically, working W-2, as a W-2 employee, I mean, you're hopefully qualifying for benefits. You're more of an employee of that organization, right? That just means you're going to get a W-2 at the end of the year for working for that company. In our case, it's still project-based work. If you're not working, you don't get paid. So it's not like a salaried position. It's an hourly role. But you do qualify for benefits. You typically are working more of a full-time arrangement. It's usually not necessarily part-time. It could be part-time, but more often than not, it's probably more of a traditional full-time arrangement, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever it happens to be, something like that. You can qualify for 401k and other benefits, PTO as well. They're paying your employer is paying the employer's portion of the payroll taxes and withholding yours, so you're not responsible for any of those payments, okay? And a 1099 arrangement, you are responsible. It's your responsibility to remit those payroll taxes quarterly. You don't qualify for benefits, and you really typically should have you may be working multiple clients. You might have multiple clients as a contractor, a 1099 contractor. You probably have a little more say over your timing of when you're doing your work. I mean, you still got deadlines and things like that, and you're still working for them, but you might be able to work a little more of a flexible schedule, right? That you may not be going in to the office every day, even if they're in office, because you're a 1099 contractor, and that's kind of goes with that. Like I said, you're responsible for not only your portion of the payroll taxes, the employment taxes, but the employer's portion as well. Good news is you actually get a greater self-employment IRA deduction. So if you were trying to put some money aside for retirement, you do get a greater benefit there. But you don't qualify for time off or PTO or vacations and those kinds of things. So I don't know if that answers it, gives you a little bit of a thumbnail idea of that. Commitment. Commitments can be very important when working with these firms. Firms like ours, I mean, we typically are asking our candidates that are working projects for us to give a 2-week notice if they land a permanent position, just like you would if you were working for a client. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you're going to get pressured to not do it. The reason we ask for 2-week notice is because it gives us the opportunity to replace you, to at least have some time to get somebody out in there. Usually it doesn't take us 2 weeks, but it's nice to be able to provide that to our clients. Unfortunately, projects can end at any time, so you're not necessarily guaranteed the 2-week notice on the other side, and that's unfortunate. But typically, we're having good communication. That's the next one, right? This communication going back and forth, so we're up to date on when projects are ending, so there's no surprises. That helps. But fulfilling those commitments is really important. Sometimes you need a commitment that's longer term. Like we may have a project that's like a maternity leave or medical leave situation where the client will invest a month to have somebody come in and transition with, or maybe 2 months, with the person before they go out on leave, and then stay in that role for about 3 months and then transition back to the returning employee. So in those situations, we're even asking for a greater commitment. So sometimes it's just understanding what is the commitment, how flexible is it. We recognize things come up, and everybody's got to try to just have good communication, talking about what's going on. You're the eyes and ears inside a client, so there's some great value to that firm that you're working with to just be able to share some of that type of information. Anybody feel the frustration of an trip to IKEA? All right. Putting yourself in best position. Resume, that's kind of everybody needs one. It's oftentimes the first thing kind of people will see is, and so everybody who looks at your resume usually has opinions. I certainly have some. I tell people you get what you pay for, and this is free advice. So, but I think it's important to have a really nice professional summary in your resume. kind of a lead-in sentence. Think of it as a resume like a movie, and the first 3 inches is your trailer. Are you capturing the attention of the reader in that first glance? And oftentimes what they're looking to do is try to check boxes, right? So make it easy for them. In that summary, have maybe 3 columns of 3 rows with some key phrases where you're hitting the qualifications for the job that you want, right? That you possess, right? Be honest, right? Be truthful, but making sure that they have, that they can see, oh, this person checks all these boxes. Let's put them in the yes pile, because that's what they're trying to do. They're screening quickly. They're looking to put people in the yes piles. They'll go back and look in more detail, but real quickly, if it's a healthcare industry job with certain technology, then make sure you're hitting healthcare, that technology right there in the quick. They go, oh, that's what we're looking for, right? And then as far as resume size, I generally say, from the looks of the room here, a 2-page resume probably. I mean, if you're brand new in your career, you can get away with a 1-page resume. But if you're more senior in your experience, then I would say a 2-page resume. 3-page resume is okay. 4-page resume is too much. There can be a supplement, right? And particularly on the technology side, where projects are so critical that you really want to be able to have some resource where your projects are more described. I think that's fine to have a supplement, but try to be able to summarize your experience. Most relevant is always the most current, say, 10 years of experience, but I like a resume that's complete. So even if you have prior experience, includes A, B, and C, or various positions in the healthcare industry, that's fine. It just kind of shows, okay, there's more experience here that they're not going into, but I don't feel like I'm being misled as an employer. I'm going, okay, this person has a lot of experience. That's good. I mean, you want to probably be working with a company that appreciates that. Interview skills, that's going to be critical. Ask for feedback all the time if you can in your interviews, because that's going to be important to you as you try to improve and develop. Energy level, right? Keeping your energy level up, and interest, showing interest, gratitude, just keeping those kinds of things up is important in that interview skills. Asking great questions that demonstrate you understand their business. I think that's the best way to sell your expertise, is by asking great questions. Versatility and expertise. So when you're looking at projects, sometimes you need to be an expert and sometimes you need to be versatile. And so knowing which one you need to be, you might have deep expertise in some areas, but you also have some versatility, maybe multiple industries, multiple software, different roles, that kind of thing. Different size organizations, public versus private. Private equity, right? Private equity is a big thing to put on that resume right now. If you've got private equity exposure, that's a big thing. There's a lot of activity in that space, and they want people who know what it's like to work with a private equity for very clear reasons. I mean, it can be really a grueling type of work. And so anyway, it's something to be thinking about too. Professionalism, never get a second chance to make a first impression. So I always say, hey, always be prepared, right? You want to dress for the job. You want to be courteous. Again, asking those great questions, but being as professional as possible. The reputation, just do what you say you're going to do. If you say, hey, I'm going to send you this by X day, send it. If you're going to follow up with A, B, and C, or sample work, do it. Your reputation. Austin is a big city, but a small town probably, right? I mean, everybody kind of, especially in your circle, of your career, probably it's even smaller, right? People in your industry, you run into the same people. So reputation is really important. And then in this day and age, just the whole working remotely, having a virtual setup is important, right? Being able to use multiple different platforms, right? If you're talking about the interview process, you might be doing a Zoom interview, you might be doing a FaceTime, or you might be doing, Google Hangout, something like that. So it just, Teams is another one, right? So just having some versatility, being able to use the different types of platforms or applications, and then also making sure that you can work from home. That you've got great internet speed and the tools to do that. right. So just kind of a real quick general update, and I want to make sure I can stick around for questions. I know we're kind of running up close to time, but I do want to do that. Pre-pandemic, so this slide here just kind of shows the unemployment rate. I mean, you can kind of see where it kind of peaked after the Great Recession, 08, 09, started coming down below 4%, below 4%, and then you see the pandemic spike, and it's kind of still back down to around below 4%. So unemployment, good news is unemployment is still low. And what's more, the number of jobs are still, this slide shows the number of unemployed per job, and again, it spiked, but there's still more jobs out there than there are people to fill them. I know it may not feel that way sitting in this room. They just haven't found you yet, or you haven't found them. This was an interesting slide. So this is the not in the labor force. So this is folks that are not working and not looking for work. And the interesting thing, this is 50-year slide. So it just kind of shows from going back to the early mid-'70s all the way to today. So roughly about 50 years. And you can kind of see this kind of gradual increasing. And then you can kind of, again, see the pandemic. I just like it just because I think it shows a little bit. This, again, is the first 25. I broke that 50 into 25-year stint. So this is the first 25 from early mid-'70s up to 2000. And you can kind of see, okay, we started seeing it really increasing in the late 90s as baby boomers started retiring a little bit earlier. But then you can see this last 25 of what happened. It really started increasing even more here in the late 2010 and beyond. The most interesting thing about this slide is you see the big spike. We went from, so the first 25 years of that 50 years, I think I saw, let's go back real quick. It was, about 10 million or so, roughly about 10 million had left the workforce. Right here, in the next 25 years, it's almost 30 million have left the workforce. But the greatest thing is this: after the pandemic, 4 million people just didn't return to work. I mean, and left the workforce. So it kind of corrected itself partially. You know, you had about 96 million not working and not looking for work, spiked up to 104, and then about to 100 million. So 4 million people. It's like I thought the rapture happened or something, where it would happen. Just didn't return. I think ultimately, as it's kind of been level for the last 4 years or so, we just saw some early retirement. Some people just didn't come back. And we probably all know somebody like that. Or they were taking care of elderly parents or taking care of something, right? I mean, there's different reasons that people may have left the workforce. Could be health reasons, could be all kinds of different things. But we definitely saw that. So I think that's what's kind of creating this. There is still a need. I mean, in 08 and 09, I mean, I'm sure Craig can speak, and I was in rooms like this that were full, right? We were having to move to different places because this wasn't big enough. And so it is, I just want to tell you, you're going to find it. It's not a question of when. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, right? You're going to find that next opportunity. So anyway, I wanted to leave some room for questions. I know it's 10:32 now. So I don't know if that next speaker needs to come up and take control. But if you have questions, maybe I can answer them. Anybody? No? Well, I'll stick around for a little bit if somebody just is shy and wants to ask me in the back. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.